And I'm going to start with comments made last week at the Big 12 meetings by NCAA President Charlie Baker. And Baker said, and I quote, that the hope is that discussions can be had to potentially expand the NCAA tournament to 72 or 76 teams as early as 2026. This much I can tell you. And if you've heard me on other platforms or if you've read me on other platforms, you know where I stand on this all important issue. And I am going to go again to how I start my monologue on this particular topic. People who know me know I'm a movie guy. And in the movie The Lost World, the sequel to Jurassic Park, which came out in 1997, Jeff Goldblum said that taking dinosaurs off this island was the worst idea in the long, sad history of bad ideas. Expanding the NCAA tournament would usurp that statement and that sentiment. And look, I understand that in the offseason, people are going to make statements. I understand that things are being said sometimes tongue in cheek. But for the people to continually bring this up as an option, don't understand just the carnage that would be caused to the NCAA tournament, but also the carnage that would be caused to college basketball's regular season. And as somebody who lives for college basketball 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 12 months out of the calendar, I got to tell you, anybody who is bringing up this as a good idea doesn't know what they're talking about. And here's why. Let's start first with the NCAA tournament. Shouldn't the greatest tournament in sports be an exclusive club? Shouldn't the greatest tournament in sports be something that you have to work for? Because if you cover the NCAA tournament and if you cover college basketball from soup to nuts, like I do and other great reporters do on this beat, you know this. Every single year, all we talk about is how weak the bubble has gotten. And it feels like it's almost an annual tradition to make sentiments and statements that are synonymous with that very theme. And now there wants to be the belief again to expand this tournament by 4 teams or by 8 teams. I am not wavering on what I said on Selection Sunday last year, and that's North Carolina making the NCAA tournament was the most unfathomable decision that I have ever seen by the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee in 20 years doing this on the national beat. Now, full credit to North Carolina for beating San Diego State in the first 4. But the facts are the facts. The teams that are selected for the NCAA tournament, just because there might be a controversial inclusion that has no bearing on how a team performs once the actual games start in the bracket. But this much I'll tell you, folks. If North Carolina was good enough to get into the NCAA tournament last year as the 68th team out of 68 participants, and there is a notion just a few months later that the NCAA hopes to expand the event, I might, for the first time in 41 and a half years, be at a loss for words. And look, the NCAA tournament should be a meritocracy. And I firmly believe, just like I said on Selection Sunday, that West Virginia and Indiana should have been in the field over North Carolina and San Diego State. But that is not the reason why I am having this type of a statement now. That is not the reason why I'm doing this monologue. I am doing this monologue because we need to preserve the greatest event in sports. And if the NCAA opts to expand the NCAA tournament by 4 spots or 8 spots, you are watering down the greatest event in sports. And here's why. People say, maybe from the periphery, well, it's just another first 4, or it's just 2 more first 4s. And wouldn't it be great to include more teams so that more players would get the experience of playing in the NCAA tournament? This isn't the type of participation event where everybody is supposed to get a trophy. It's supposed to be hard, if I can quote Tom Hanks in A League of Their Own. The hard is what makes it great. And that's the NCAA tournament's perspective. when you think about the logistics of adding accommodations for 4 or 8 more teams. But here's what I can tell you, which not enough people are talking about. In fact, a very small percentage are talking about. Part of the intrigue for college basketball, and I say this as somebody now who has worked for CBS Sports since 2010 and has worked also covering college basketball at the national level for a couple of years beyond that, because I also worked in television starting in 2007 and for other networks. This is what I will say. One of the biggest things that draws people in from the periphery when it comes to college basketball, once those other people, you know who you are, spend time following the college football playoff or find time, obviously, following the NFL playoffs and the Super Bowl. I'm not one of them. The thing that draws people in from the end of the NFL up until Selection Sunday is the bubble. And who's in and who's out and everything that goes with that daily. Who's your first 4 in? Who's your first 4 out? And if the NCAA is going to choose to extend that to 4 or 8 spots, all of a sudden we are just going to continue to water down the brackets. You are going to see teams that are 6 and 12, or maybe even 5 and 13 in certain instances, be in the NCAA tournament, not mid-major programs. And if people are making the argument that they think that expanding the NCAA tournament is going to warrant more inclusion for mid-major programs who are playing in predominantly one-bid leagues, if that's the argument that certain people are making, well, then guess what? I got some swampland in Florida to sell you. Because expanding the NCAA tournament is only going to really, really come in handy if you are a power conference team that is struggling to find your way in the field. That's the bottom line. Not going to see more teams out of Atlantic 10. You're not going to see a 5th team out of the Mountain West. You're not going to see another team out of the Big West. You're going to see double-digit teams from the Big 10, from the SEC. You might see a team or more out of the Big 12 or the Big East or the ACC. That's who this is going to benefit. That's what's going to happen. Now, I know events can always be improved, but this is not improving. And for the people who continue to make the arguments, well, we always have expansion, and look what people obviously throw themselves into. People will gamble on it. People will watch on Tuesday, just like people watch the wild card in the NBA or whatever it is, the play-in game, or the wild card in Major League Baseball. Don't compare the NCAA tournament, the holy grail of postseason sports, to other postseasons in professional sports. It is different. It is pristine, but it is not perfect. And this is one thing that I want to make sure I get out on this platform, because I have said it on other platforms, and I want to make sure that I say it again. There is one thing I would change with the NCAA tournament, and it's not adding more teams, and it's not shrinking the field. This is something that I have said ad nauseum, and I'm going to say it again. If I was running the NCAA tournament, in order to soup things up a little bit on Tuesday and Wednesday in Dayton, I would make sure that all automatic qualifiers, all teams that won their respective conference tournaments, were able to start in the round of 64 and had that round of 64 experience on Thursday and Friday of the first week of the NCAA tournament. That's a must. And that means that the last 8 at-large teams start in Dayton on Tuesday and Wednesday in the first 4. It is the best way to get the best matchups at the start of the tournament. And it also, I think, will drag people in from the periphery and make the first 2 days that much more exciting. But again, don't expand the NCAA tournament. Don't talk about expanding the NCAA tournament. We have seen things be done in society that make absolutely no sense. This would make absolutely no sense.